Do we cue up the music now? And it's like, welcome to another edition of Union.
I think it is live now.
Yes, we are live.
Thank you. All right. Well, thank you and welcome to Union School District's Parent Evening. And tonight we're really lucky to have Jamie Nunes from Common Sense Media to share some wisdom about kids and being online and safety and keeping them engaged. The other thing too is this is one part of a 3-part series, and so if you've checked out the parent newsletters that have been going out, there will be a second one that's live at DMS on December 15th, and we hope to see you there. All right, Jamie, take
Thanks,
it
Lisa.
away.
Appreciate you all. I probably should have asked one technical question before we start, which is, can you all give me access to share my screen?
Oh, of course.
Silly. And everyone else that's joining us, thank you all for attending on this Wednesday evening. We really appreciate it. I promise I won't keep you more than about 35 minutes this evening. This is a starter, a hook for you all for additional sessions that will be arriving shortly. So, all right, everyone, this is great. All right, so my name is Jamie Nunez. As Lisa pointed out, I'm a huge advocate of Union School District, and especially around tech integration. I've been really excited to explore how that looks and what that looks like across that district. And so what we're going to be discussing, and really the theme throughout the next few months, is discussing digital well-being. That is what it is that our kids are doing online, how to engage in a safe manner, but how to think critically about the spaces that they're in. And our first session really is about addressing and creating safe spaces. It's a framework for all the other sessions that and all the other talking or engagements that we'll have across Union School District. Let's get started. If you're curious, like, what exactly are those 4 tips, Jamie? Like, let me have them already so I can move on with my life. I'm sharing them now, and then we're going to delve deeper into them. So the first is we're going to delve into how your child both uses and misuses technology. We want to be able to identify that and take not only inventory, but observe those patterns. And I'll share some of those trends momentarily about what that looks like. The second is we want to invite you all to think about how you're modeling effective communication skills online. So are you affirming online and showing what that looks like for your child? Are you understanding how to connect with your child when they are resolving a conflict? Do they have the skills needed and the language needed to communicate effectively? So we're going to think about what that looks like. Finally, the third one I should say, we're going to figure out how you want to plan and use tech, when that should be used and when it shouldn't be. Many parents often share that they really struggle with creating those barriers and those parameters. So we'll encourage you to think about what that actually looked like. We'll go through a quick activity. And then finally, and I think probably the most important for this series, is really thinking about how you discuss and the space that you allow your child to discuss their own dilemmas that they grapple with, whether it's transitioning to and from technology, whether it's repairing a friendship that they severed online while making a comment. We want to be able to ensure that you give your child the space to discuss what those dilemmas are. All right, let's get into it and let's figure out what this is. So as I sort of pointed out a minute ago, I think for communities and for families, I think that when I speak to them, one of the things that they are grappling with is like, Jamie, there are so many dilemmas that I'm grappling with my child, whether they're using phones, they're misusing phones, or they're just over consumed by the technology or this media that's in front of them. And what I'm going to encourage you to think about is how to then turn these dilemmas into learning opportunities for your child. And what will do that is really, and how you do that, I should say, is key to what that can look like. So I'm going to share with you the deck, and Union, Lisa will share the deck with you, but I'm going to reference one resource that we have at Common Sense. We have hundreds of resources, but I'm just going to reference one for you that I'll encourage you to look at the end of our session. And this is our Family Engagement Toolkit. These are resources that support those healthy media habits that we'll discuss now. They include things like tips for tech, ongoing digital citizenship resources, as well as some media agreements that we will cover. All right, so let's get into why this is all important, why engagement online is so relevant in our kids' lives. And I'm only going to give you one slide around research, but I think it's probably the most important one. What we're seeing is a pattern, and again, I'm referencing a research report that Common Sense does every few years. These are, in this case, this research is about how our kids were navigating their digital media and how they were managing that amongst the mental health sort of background or backdrop that they had in their own lives. And one of the things that they shared is that when they were feeling depressed, stressed, or anxious, that social media, being on social media, had actually made them feel much better, right? So, and this is really interesting to point out that our kids are turning to these spaces. Younger kids obviously are trying to emulate or trying to model what older kids are doing, but for the most part, we're seeing that our kids are engaging in digital media to explore those connections. And what we're hoping to do with these tips that I'm going to share with you is to provide a stopgap, to provide some parameters around what those best usage might like. You might say, Jamie, I completely hate everything to do with technology, and in our household, that just doesn't work. To that, I commend you for having such a great sort of value system. And I want to also invite you to explore the idea that many of our spaces where our kids socialize are often in digital media and these social media platforms. So, right. Tip number one, I wish I had someone flashing, or wish I could join you in person and I'd be jumping up in the air over this first tip. I want you to identify how your child both uses technology and misuses technology. What does that look like? Let's delve into some of these tips on, or some of these ways in which we can actually think about this. The first is I hear time and time again parents clumping tech time together, meaning they spend so much time on technology. I hear the words addicted to technology. And my first encouragement is to think and observe how our kids are actually using technology. Are they passively consuming it? Are they scrolling or viewing something? Are they on autopilot? Are they learning something from the media that they're consuming? And are they being interactive? Perhaps when they're playing games, they're solving a problem on a particular platform. Maybe they're actually creating and collaborating with one another. There's an interactivity between the platform themselves and their peers or the other users on that platform. Maybe they are exploring ways that they are video chatting with maybe a family member. But this is entirely different than passive consumption of technology. And finally, thinking about are they creative in this? Are they creating something? Are they editing a video that takes a long time to produce and then create? Are they coding? Are they teaching something to someone online using a platform like Discord? As you think about misuse and use in your child's tech life or their digital life, first think about how they actually engage with technology. And my encouragement and invitation for you is to not oversimplify or clump things together using the notion of time. That's all also very important. But the first thing we want to do is we want to keep an eye out as to what it is that they're actually doing when they're on the device. Let me delve a little bit into that just so you are aware of what these misusage it could look like once we delve into that, right? So you might find that as our kids are engaging online, you might find that they're seeking affirmations from the platforms that they're using. I'm going to give you one example that seems to be trending on our end, or that we see is being downloaded quite a bit, even more so than TikTok, and that is the application called Gas. And that's an application, if you recall being in high school or middle school, where you voted on someone's best hair or best, funniest person. What this app has intended to do is to use and leverage validations or connections with someone to then report that feedback back to the user. So if Lisa and I were on this platform, I might sort of say, oh, Lisa has some really great hair. She's got the best hair. Lisa would then receive a positive affirmation from a user, an anonymous user. But my point here is if our kids are using an application like Gas, we want to be mindful as to if there's inherent affirmations or authenticity behind that. Another misuse that we might find is our kids overthinking and spending too much time collaborating with their peers on TikTok, and that can look all sorts of ways. But the over connections that they might have, the overconsumption of what their peers look like or how they perceive themselves, might be problematic when they're on TikTok, might be both viewing as well as creating on something. And then finally, we might find that there's quite a bit of misuse, right? We might find that our kids are just being curious, as all kids tend to be when they're first engaging with technology in a particular way. But they might be using unsafe sites like Omegle. And I may have shared this before at some point, and I just want to review this. This is kind of a really great example of what that could potentially look like. Let me play that out. Give me 1 second. I'm just going to reshare my audio with you all. All right.
We're not catching the audio.
You can kind of see here, and pardon me if you didn't hear the audio. I certainly I apologize for that. But the idea here is these are two strangers. Omegle, the site, pairs complete strangers up with one another, and then engages them to have conversations and allow that sort of curiosity to take place. Again, certainly spaces for misusing, but also for our kids to be curious. We want to be able to decipher what that looks like. How you do that, we'll talk about shortly. So here's really kind of the call to action for our first tip here, which is we want to take inventory. We want to understand what's actually working when your child is actually using technology. Are they enhancing their connections? Perhaps they're seeking peer tutoring support with their friends. Perhaps they're just trying to forge new friendships when they're gaming. We want to take inventory. We want to note that, right? That's a really great use of technology. Perhaps though, you might find that your child is actually lying about the location, and then that you're having to then spy or monitor their location use. That might not be working, right? That's what the misuses that if started early on could potentially be problematic down the road. There might be engaging in social exclusion with their peers, or they might be commenting on their peers in ways that you don't want to, in the ways that you all don't value on digital media. Perhaps they're writing, say, maybe crude comments or nasty comments that really are impacting their relationships with others. The key here is to want to really understand how your child is navigating and using technology before we move on to this next step. Let me stop sharing my screen just for a second to see if there's any questions. I believe there might be one, but if there's not, I will certainly keep going. All
Question
right.
was on whether or not we were going to be sharing the slides, and I said yes, and we're recording, so that both will be available afterwards.
You got it. Certainly. Wonderful. Thank you, Lisa.
Thanks.
All right. Let's move on to the next section, which is once we understand how technology is used in our own child's life, then the next thing we want to do is be able to interrupt their current sort of communication experience and exchanges with one another. And what that really means is modeling for your child how to actually communicate in a way that reinforces the values that you have as a family. I'll give you a personal example. In my household, I love and I appreciate when my child provides compliments, is kind, and can say please and thank you. And so naturally, we build that up by modeling when we're doing it. Sometimes in a meta way, meaning like, this is how I said thank you to the waiter when they served us this particular meal, to just repeating that in our household as a mantra. So the idea here is we want to model and help to ensure that our kids are modeling what effective communication looks like online. And I just want to remind us as to why this is important. And what we're seeing in when we speak with parents is the idea that our kids think that being mean can sometimes just be normal, right? That they normalize the idea that the types of communication that they're experiencing online as they get a little older is just what the narrative is. So these things could be things like subtle jabs at a person, things like ignoring a comment when someone's asking a question, or in the case of when kids encounter digital dilemmas, perhaps misinterpreting a message and not seeking clarification. And so we want to stop that because when this doesn't happen, we sort of can know what the results can be. And the way to do that, I think, is first, you want to make sure that you ask yourself, what are some of the skills that you find important in your household? Is it, have you modeled ways that your child can actually communicate when they're stressed or anxious? Are there ways in which you are teaching your child how to affirm others online? Perhaps you're teaching or you really value and you want to model like what it means to seek clarification when someone says something that's confusing. So the idea here is you want to ask yourself, well, what do I want my child to be? How do I want my child to be engaging in these spaces? Perhaps things that you can maybe practice tomorrow as a applicable tip is things like when you provide, you might want to sort of, if you've been corresponding with someone and you've commented something nice on their message, or shared a unique way in which you're text messaging with someone, this might be a really great way to kind of share with your older child. For if you have younger kids, perhaps you want to model what it means to actually turn off your device. So again, these are skills that you can easily build out and explain to your child starting tomorrow. Perhaps you're thinking about like emojis, right? The use of emojis to communicate some type of feeling. If you have a feeling chart in your household and you want to transfer that in an online space, perhaps you want to talk about what those emojis actually mean. The key to all of this is to ensure that you are practicing those skills and you're being very explicit about what those skills are in your household. All good? I'm going fairly quickly because I want to make sure that you all feel like this is a hook, like you want more information. We can have a broader, much bigger conversation as to what we can do about it. So, right, tip number 3. 1 is take inventory. 2 is understand communication skills and be able to model them. And 3 is we want to then plan out how and when tech should be used. Now, if you're thinking to yourself, that's too late, Jamie, in my household, this is, my child is, the device runs our household. Today, I'm giving you that freedom and that connection and that empowerment to really pause and reflect on when and how tech should actually be used in your household. So let me give you an example of what this can look like. We're going to go through an activity, and what I want you all to do on the call is to share or to take note on the activities that are presented in your household or that your kids go through every week. So first thing you want to do is take note of every activity, every type of engagement your child has during school or after school, between Monday and Friday of the week, or between Monday and Sunday of the week. This could be things like chores. This could be things like playing with others. Once you identify what your child does every week, then you want to, in those activities, you want to put write a T next to things that you think technology enhances or you allow technology to take place, or you want to put an X next to the things that you know technology should not be anywhere near your child's engagement. Let me give you a quick example. In my household, I love music, and for dinner time, one of the things I enjoy doing is playing music out of my phone through our tiny speaker into our kitchen. And to do that, we clearly have to use technology. And we don't have to, but this is a choice I want to make. But one of the interesting things in which we use technology to enhance that connection is by allowing my daughter before dinner starts to choose the genre of music in relation to the type of food that we're eating. So if we're having Italian pasta, we're going to be playing Italian music, and she then gets to select that. The key here is we want to be intentional of when technology should and shouldn't appear in our child's activities. Make sense? Take a moment now. It'll take about 30 seconds for you to just jot down those activities in your household, and then quickly put a T or an X, a T next to the activities that you think technology could enhance, and an X next to activities that you know you don't want present when you are you or your child are going through them. So, if we do that, I'm just going to quickly read the something. Thank you very much. What are the signs of misuse? We will get into that shortly, and I'll give you some sort of great things to look out for in that space. Great question. All right, you all. I'm now going to close us off with our fourth and final tip. But before I do, one of the great things that you then can do, if you haven't done so already, is set aside some expectations after you've identified those tech uses in your child's life. And this could be in a form of an agreement. This can be in a form of just some general expectations. This is when we use technology. This is when we absolutely don't use technology. And here are the three things that I'd like to see when I view your device, or the three things we need to be seen. I need you to show me things that affirm how nice you are as a person, or how kind you are, and things that you do when you transition away from technology. This is what it should look like. The key here is we want to make sure that once we identify those activities, we then create some parameters around how the child should then engage, or your child should then engage. Right, so what we have here is a media agreement. I've shared this a number of times across Union, and Union does a great job of linking the site, but in case you need it, here's another great example from Common Sense that provides you with a template, things that you can both start the conversation with and also start to incorporate in your household. So, all right, and the final thing, thank you all for sticking around. This is great. I'm so excited that hopefully you feel as excited as I am every day about discussing these issues, and can turn that narrative around in your household if it's one where you don't engage with it at the moment, or you don't resonate with it. And the fourth one, I think, is, again, as I pointed out, this is probably the most important. This is the one where I want to really emphasize why we need to do this. I want you to entertain the idea that two things are happening. One is that your child might be grappling with some dilemmas, and that might be something that they encounter online. Let me give you another personal example. Recently, my child started to, every few weeks, she recycles some of the applications that she uses in our home. And her latest bout of applications or apps that she's downloaded contain quite a number of ads. And she recently came across an ad that really just didn't resonate with her, and she didn't know what to do. And ironically, I was sitting right next to her, and as I peeked over, she turned the device off in a form of, she was a little shamed, or she felt a little embarrassed. And don't really know what the ad was. I just saw remnants of it. It might not it may have not been appropriate, but the way in which she encountered that dilemma clearly told me that she didn't know what to do about it. And so then we had to discuss that. Like, hey, I noticed that when I peeked, you turned your camera, or you turned the iPad down. Was there something that made you feel embarrassed about it? You want to talk about it? You want to go through that? And when she was ready, we were able to have a conversation as to what she didn't like. The fact that the ad shared some monsters that scared her off. Again, this is something that happens in my second grader, my child that's 8 years old, that she's grappling with, right? So what we're hoping to do, and what we did during that time, is then model for her. We had to role play the idea of, when this happens again, here are the things that we want to do. And she came up with those practices. We then practiced them. Whether or not that's working has yet to be determined, but she now has the skills needed to address that based on just a subtle conversation that we had. So what I'm going to share with you now is a way to do that. And what we have here are conversation starters. This little hand with the link button here gives you access to our social and emotional engagement conversation starters at home. This is a third grade one about how to talk to your child about the interactions that they have to ensure that they're fun and friendly. And there are some basic questions. So what I would do is I would click on this link, and I would maybe take one or two questions from our starter and see if you can apply it during dinner time, maybe when you're in the car, maybe as your child is actually getting out of the shower and getting ready for bed. Things that you think might be helpful when you have or moments that you find that there's these connections that you have with your child, to talk about some of these issues. We want to be able to normalize that dilemmas do exist, and sometimes they're really difficult to respond to and react to. And so we want to try to practice them by talking about them. So again, what I'm encouraging you all to do is to look at some of our conversation starters and think about how some of these prompts and these questions can actually be beneficial in your family. Right, if there's nothing else that you took from this last 25 minutes, and that there's one slide that might be memorable for you all, is just this acronym here, that our media consumption and a healthy way to engage for our kids to engage online is for us to really model and to help to assess these 5 areas. First is just modeling, be that example. If you yourself are overly using technology at home and you just are doing it for work, or it's an issue for you as a parent, reset your own expectations for your child and be that healthy model that your kids are looking, because they are certainly watching, as mine does to me. Second is engage, right? We want to, I shared briefly just a second ago about conversations. Talk about those conversations, engage in the content of the message. And if you find yourself that your child doesn't want to share, reset those expectations and be able to normalize the fact that conversations are just part of the engagements we need to have as a family. Third is you want to adjust particularly areas and notifications that occur online. So if your child is being exposed to too many notifications when they're online, be able to name that and adjust accordingly to the app. Maybe you want to turn a number of them off every week. Perhaps you want to adjust when tech is not available in your entire house. Maybe you want to dedicate a day where tech is just not used in your household, right? This is the idea of make those minor tweaks. And then the final 2 is really just limit. Really the one big piece where that is very clear to us is that technology use really should not, child should not have access to tech 90 minutes or more, essentially, before bed. And so if your child is watching some type of show right up until bed, we want to maybe see if we can reset those expectations and see if we can develop a different connections with technology and the time they're using it. And then again, finally, be able, as always, to affirm and support your child when they actually reinforce your values, or they are struggling to adhere to your tech agreements. There might be other reasons for that beyond just the rules that are established in your household. All right, I wish you a beautiful rest of your evening. I will stop sharing my screen now, but before I do, I will encourage you all to take my email down if you just need any support, or you need me to clarify something, or something's going on in your household and you just need a thought partner. Please reach out to me. While I'm not a counselor, I'm very involved and very passionate about making sure that families create their own digital habits in a way that actually works for them. All right, so let me stop sharing my screen. Thank you all very much. If I were to see you all, I'd high five you for the amazing work that you're already doing. But if not, just take my virtual high fives as a replacement for them. Thanks, Miss Lisa. Let me answer some questions here. You can type on the chat there some questions if you have any for me. I'm happy to share that. Or if there's any great tips that you all have for one another, please feel free to share them on the Q&A, and Ms. Lisa will give you some access and some kudos to that. So, all right, the first question is, what are signs of misuse? I need a little bit more information in terms of your child, but let me first see if I can kind of like paint that picture. Early on, the misuse for our kids when they first get a device, this might be a second or even first or second grader, maybe the third. The misuses are often associated with them not knowing what to do when they come across content that is not developmentally appropriate. Misuse could also be transitioning to and from technology. They don't have the language necessary to say, I still want some more time. And so they can perhaps throw a fit. Perhaps they want technology at all hours of the day and they don't necessarily know how to engage with it, that they're seeing the content passively, or they're viewing content passively. They're not learning from the device. So we want to be mindful of what that misuse looks like. As they get a little older and they start to engage with peers online, maybe they're playing Roblox, they are the biggest misuse that we're seeing is misinterpretation of messages that occur on these platforms. So a child might say something to another child on a platform. The child doesn't know what to do with that information. And then that's then brought to school, or that then is creating more drama outside of the actual platform. Things like social inclusion tend to happen. So some of the signs that you see as a parent, though, are a child sort of talking back and forth if they're playing games like Roblox. I'm trying to figure out who said what. There might be an elevated tone that you want to be mindful of. Again, it really depends on the child's age. And when they get into middle school, we want to make sure that we are looking at socialization and relationship building. Maybe they're coming across peers from peers that they might like, or relationships that they want to have further connections with. This is where our kids then start to getting into content that might be sensual in nature. So kind of exploring things as their bodies are developing and as they're going through puberty. So, and then in high school, quite a number of relationships, cyberbullying issues that take place. Signs that take place around that are when a child that doesn't want to show you their device, will lie about the locations that they're in, will want to access internet when internet is no longer available in your house. You want to have these broader conversations at that point. Great question. And again, as Lisa pointed out, we're going to dive much deeper on these topics on December 15th, just so you are aware of that. All right, any other questions? That is a great question, and I'm more than willing to take additional questions from you all. All right, that is your snapshot. Please reach out. 4 tips, just remind them as you're showering or drinking your coffee in the morning, as you're running, just repeat those things, taking inventory, communicate, make a plan, and talk about these issues. To that, I wish you a beautiful Wednesday. Feel free to stay on if there's additional questions. Otherwise, I will let you enjoy the rest of your evening.